Christian McCaffrey has one game under his belt, and he's now primed to go berserk in Week 11. We dig into and debate our Week 11 running back and quarterback rankings on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Thank you to our everydayers for giving us a listen. We're here every day from Monday through Friday, helping you win your fantasy football leagues. I am one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first dollar bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, every single Wednesday, we start our rankings for the week, and we start with our running backs and quarterbacks. Tomorrow, we will hit on our wide receivers and tight ends. Right at the top, I want to discuss Christian McCaffrey because you have him as your number one running back on the week. I have him number two behind Joe Mixon, but I'm fine with him at number one. He always destroys the Seahawks, Vinny.
Yeah, and the Seahawks run defense has not been good. Over the bye, in case you missed it, they were actually letting go their leading tackler in Tyrell Dodson. So he's gone. I don't understand that move when your team stinks against the run and can't cover running backs out of the backfield either. So what does that lead to? A massive game by Christian McCaffrey at home, by the way, where we know Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, this entire offense crushes it typically against weaker defensive opponents. So look, I have no problems putting him back there. He showed me enough last week in limited touches that he's going to be his same explosive self. Made a nice 30-yard pass play as well with Brock Purdy. So the complete Christian McCaffrey is there. The experience will come back. So we've been waiting for this long. It's week 11. Hopefully you survived without McCaffrey with maybe Jordan Mason and some other running backs. But now's your turn. McCaffrey's going to have a strong stretch run to close out the season.
Yeah, he played 88% of snaps in his first game back. Garendo and Mason each had one carry apiece, and he got the rest of the work. But McCaffrey has had at least 130 scrimmage yards in all 6 career games against the Seahawks. That's tied for the longest streak to start a career versus a single opponent by any player, tied with Eric Dickerson, the Hall of Famer, against the Dolphins. So he can actually break that record this week. Now, moving on to Devin Etienne, who had a disappointing week on Monday Night Football against the Rams, but we're both expecting him to bounce back in a really favorable matchup against the Raiders, who are allowing the 6th most points per game to running backs. But we both have him as our running back 3 this week.
Yeah, he's the type of guy that can explode and take over the game. And I think the Dolphins have kind of been dormant offensively for a few weeks. They're figuring out a few pieces here and there, but haven't put it all together. The Raiders defense is going to help them put it all together here back at home. And one notable thing from last week, they won the game against the Rams, but Raheem Mostert didn't register a carry in that game. So you had a little bit of Jalen Wright sprinkled in behind Devin Etienne, but really it was Etienne being the workload guy. He's also taken over a lot as an intermediate receiver for them, cutting into the work of Jalen Waddle in that capacity. So if you look at Devin Etienne, he's gotten actually better. This offensive line has been a bit up and down. This offense in general has been up and down, but this is a get-well game. I think all your Dolphins assets finally are going to put it all together and have a big, big game. I'm not going to say it's going to be that 70-point effort we saw against the Broncos last season, but still there should be a lot of points. One of the better offensive weeks in general from the Dolphins we've seen in quite a while.
Yeah, and he still got 5 receptions in that game. It didn't turn into anything, but still uses a receiver. He has to be a top option this week. Some other guys that you're not even questioning, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry, like even Kyron Williams, who has been a little low. You have him at 2 this week. Like, yeah, I have him at 8, but either like you're not questioning whether you're starting him or not. Alvin Kamara. But one thing I did want to hit on 2 guys that you're still plugging in pretty much no matter what, but you have them especially high. It's Josh Jacobs, number 6. and you're still believing in Breece Hall at number 7. I like Josh Jacobs as well this week. I'm at 11 though, so a little bit lower. And then I have Breece Hall at 14, and I don't even feel good about that. So talk about their two matchups and why you feel so strongly about them this week.
Yeah, I love Josh Jacobs. I mean, the Bears have been absolutely destroyed now defensively, and especially against the run. They're okay still. They're holding themselves by their own with the passing defense, but they're weakened up front. I mean, you've had Montez Sweat get banged up, and he's kind of slowed things up in the front seven. So they're very vulnerable against the run. The Packers are coming off a bye. They're going to try to fix Jordan Love here with all his interceptions. The best way to do that is to run the ball in this game. And they should also play very good defense. Caleb Williams was sacked 9 times last week. So this is a good correlation here for DFS as well to look at it. I think Packers are going to come in, smash the Bears. You'll have a lot of Jacobs touching the ball. Marshawn Lloyd not quite ready, I don't think, to come back yet. And Emmanuel Wilson getting only a handful of touches behind him. So I love that for Jacobs. I think he'll be the focal point of that offense in a Packers victory. And then Breece Hall's back at home. The Colts defense is not very good against the run. We saw it last week where James Cook started slowly, but then he ended up with a very strong game as well. So Breece Hall was one of the things that was working there in Arizona, and they just didn't have enough opportunity to do it. So Breece Hall, I think, is a rebound game at home as well as Jacobs on the road this week.
My biggest thing, like Jacobs, 100%. I'm with you. I could move him up a little bit. I'm fine with your ranking of him. The Breece Hall thing, it's just like he has a good matchup, but the Jets are such a gross team, and he's not scoring points. So that does make me nervous. Now, we both, I'm higher on Jahmyr Gibbs than you, but it's by a couple spots. Jahmyr Gibbs is a baller, and he has a great matchup against the Jaguars. But let's talk about his teammate, David Montgomery, because you have them ranked back to back. Gibbs and Montgomery, you have at 12. I have David Montgomery at 13. I really, really like him this week. I know he doesn't typically like have super high upside, but in this matchup against the Jaguars, where they don't want Jared Goff to pass, right? The Lions want to be a run heavy offense. He's going to get so much work. We know he gets a lot of goal line opportunities. I mean, he's like a touchdown machine. So I won't be surprised if he ends with 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in week 11.
Yeah, I mean, they should destroy the Jaguars. They're double-digit favorites at home. That means they should be running in the second half, protecting a lead, not Jared Goff dropping back and trying to erase 5 interceptions from earlier in the game and come back, right? That's not going to happen against the Jaguars. They're not going to need to do that. The defense is actually playing better as well of late. Got him back in the game last week against the Texans was great. A couple weeks ago also against the Titans. So when I look at this matchup, it should be lopsided. The only thing that holds me against putting up Jahmyr Gibbs higher is David Montgomery, because I don't know where all the touchdowns are going to go. I just don't know. I mean, Gibbs needs to seemingly score from well outside the 5, right, where David Montgomery inside the 5 is probably going to get most of his touchdowns there. So I see multiple touchdowns combined for these backs. I just don't know how they're going to play out. But Montgomery, if there's a business of scoring touchdowns, he's definitely going to get in the end zone. So that gives him a very high floor from week to week just because how explosive this Lions offense is. And I think there's a misconception on the Lions offense where this is an explosive offense. Sure, they are, but it starts with a running game. Everything creates everything else here. If they can run the ball effectively, it opens up the play action for Jared Goff. It makes it easier to throw the deep ball for him. It opens up the middle of the field in the passing game, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. So when Jared Goff is at his best is when the running game and all that support him. When he's got to do it out there by himself, the numbers are usually not pretty.
I agree with you there. We have a lot more to get to with our running backs. That's just talking through our top 12. I also have Jonathan Taylor in there at 10. You know, with Anthony Richardson back, it's just going to be easier to run the ball. The Jets stink right now. So you have Jonathan Taylor right there at 13. So not too far out of your top 12 running backs. We're going to talk about Chase Brown because I am very, very high on Chase Brown. But before we do that, let's take a quick break. Tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers could bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. One bet I'm loving for this week is for the 49ers minus 6.5. I know it seems like a lot of points against the Seahawks. I don't care. The 49ers have won 6 straight games against the Seahawks, and they have a plus 88 point differential over those 6 games. Purdy and Geno Smith have faced off 4 times, and Purdy and the 49ers have won by 8 points in all of those matchups. So again, that's 49ers minus 6.5 against the Seahawks. So again, you just have to place that $5 bet. And if you win, you get started with $150 in bonus bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today to join. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
This episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is also brought to you by Prize Picks. And we do reveal our Prize Picks picks of the week, our 6-pack of picks there for you on Friday's show. But if you don't know what Prize Picks are, Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With more than 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long, only on Prize Picks. It's a lot of fun to play. Michelle and I, because we're on a fantasy show, we are all about the mores, but you can play the lesses as well. And now you can win up to 10 or 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. That's 100 times your money, as little as correcting 4 picks here. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join more than 10 million users and sign up today. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When picks hit, I can get my money in as little as 15 minutes. Check it out. Prize Picks is the place to go to get in on the best and easiest DFS. Download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's only at Prize Picks. Again, $50 instantly. Just Locked On NFL will get you that with your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Michelle, it is time to continue the show with our running back rankings here. We'll get to our quarterbacks in our final segment. Chase Brown, you teased ahead of the break how much you love him. You must have pivoted all your Zach Moss love and put all that energy into Chase Brown. And I agree with you. We have him pretty high this week. I'm at 17 only because the matchup was a little tough against the Chargers. You have him at 12, but I still think he's a weekly play at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this was the thing. These two were hurting each other in the backfield because Moss was getting all the receptions, Brown was stealing the touchdowns. We needed both of those to come together, right? And then also for them to get the volume. Chase Brown is now getting everything in this backfield. I know he had that major fumble and they traded for Khalil Herbert, but I still think Chase Brown is going to be their number one guy. He's just getting in, like, yeah, this Chargers matchup looks a little difficult, but he's getting so many targets that if they're struggling to run the ball, it doesn't matter because he got 11 targets last game against a tough Ravens run defense because they couldn't do much, but he still got the rushing touchdown and 11 targets. So he's my running back 12, which is low for him. He's been running back 5 and running back 3 the last 2 weeks, moving him down slightly because of the matchup, but still he just has to be in your lineup every week moving forward.
Yeah, and the Bengals offense obviously is explosive. It's going to be putting him in a lot of positions to score touchdowns as well. This game, I think, is going to be high scoring because the Chargers, if you look at a lot of their defensive efforts that they've dominated, they've faced a lot of weak offenses.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been kind of the resume padding here so far. It's good for them, right? It's like the Commanders beating up on some bad teams. But if you want to become a good team, you got to start beating up on the bad teams. So good for them. But this is going to be a fun one, I think, on Sunday night. There's going to be a lot of points scored. I'm glad they flexed it because you'll get the powder blue uniforms on one side. You'll get Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. So it should be a lot of fun. You want to have a lot of attachment to this game in fantasy and good reason to tune in if you don't care about the Bengals or Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, that should be a fun game. I'm
Yeah.
kind of hoping the Chargers defense has just been kind of a mirage here where they only look
Okay.
good because of the teams they've played. We'll see. But there's two running backs that you're high on that I think are bold takes here. Nick Chubb, you have your running back 20 against the Saints. He has not been so good. Running back 43 and running back 46 the last 2 weeks, putting up 5 and 4 fantasy points. And then Jalen Warren, you have it running back 23, actually ahead of Najee Harris, who you have at running back 28. Talk through those rankings, Vinny.
Okay, I'll actually start with Jalen Warren because you look at what the Ravens give up middle of the field. We saw those check down short passes to Chase Brown. I think you could see a very similar kind of Steelers extension of the running game, so to speak. If they can't get going there, that's how they'll move the ball. You can beat the Ravens with some quick backs to the outside. Warren is certainly that. Najee Harris doesn't profile that way at all. He's between the tackles, and usually those type of runners do not have a lot of success against Baltimore where they're beefy inside. Now, let's get to Nick Chubb. Now, the matchup is great. Am I a little bit nervous about the usage in relation to Jerome Ford? Yes. Very nervous about that and how healthy Chubb can be. But they are coming off a bye. What else are they going to do here, right? I mean, you don't want to put Jameis Winston in harm's way of putting too many balls up in the air because he is going to get intercepted if he has too much volume here. And look, the Saints defense played a little inspired, but I still think you can beat them. They give up a lot of points to running backs this year. Their old run defense strength is out the window. So I think Nick Chubb should get a healthy dose here. I think there's a good chance he scores a touchdown this week as the Browns go a little bit run heavy to help Winston. So it's a bit of a hunch and a hope here, but I think Chubb, Jerome Ford, this is where they're going to go a lot in this Cleveland offense. That's their best chance to win the game.
Yeah, Chubb's it's going to come down to the rushing touchdowns, right?
Yeah.
If they can, I don't believe in the Saints defense. I don't think they randomly turn good. It's just the one, the boost of the coaching change for that 1 week, like we always see. Saints have allowed third most fantasy points to running backs and 12 rushing touchdowns this year. So I don't hate Nick Chubb being so high for you, but I do have him at running back 29, so a bit further down than you do. And I agree. I think Warren's the better play this week than Harris in that tough Ravens matchup. Now, we have interesting decision we have to make for Thursday Night Football. Austin Eckler against the Eagles with Brian Robinson coming back. Which one of those guys do you trust this week, or do you trust either? Because the Eagles are a super tough run defense.
Yeah, if I'm going to trust either one, I think it's Eckler. He's been in the flow of the offense more. There's a better chance he can kind of work himself out of the matchup by catching passes. It's really hard, as we've seen, even when we're talking about Audric Estime being a pickup this week, just to get those fantasy points, you need just running the ball, right? You need to have the touchdown because you don't get credit for any of the carries. But if you're in half or full point PPR, you get 3 or 4 catches. That adds a little bit to that total right away. That it's hard to get, where you have to get 40 yards rushing to equal that, and it's hard to do that, right? So I think Eckler has the easier path. Robinson's been a power back. They can be careful with him. What did we see last week? Eckler was kind of lead, and you have Jeremy McNichols as the power back, and he scored a touchdown. So I think Eckler has played well enough to keep a prominent role in this offense against the Eagles. And again, it'll be interesting. It's some strengths of the Eagles versus strengths of the Commanders. Something's going to win. I think the Commanders are going to have more success than you think. I just can't play the more touchdown-dependent guy in Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles just aren't allowing rushing touchdowns this year. So I'm going with Eckler as well. Hopefully, like the target's going to come last week, but I do think they'll be here this week in a game. They're going to need him. Now, we have 2 running backs that got a lot of their playing time taken away with another running back in their backfield coming back from injury. So you got Tony Pollard, who got work taken away from Tajay Spears. He gets a tough matchup against the Vikings this week. And then J.K. Dobbins, where Gus Edwards came back and stole some work from him. And he gets a matchup against the Bengals. The Bengals has actually been pretty good against fantasy running backs. You would think it'd be a great matchup, but they're allowing the 9th fewest points to running backs this year, 2nd fewest receiving yards to running backs as well. So who do you trust more this week? J.K. Dobbins to bounce back against the Bengals, or Tony Pollard in that extremely tough matchup against the Vikings?
Yeah, I think I definitely trust Dobbins because he still has gotten a good chunk of the work, even when Gus Edwards has been there. And yeah, he might be a little bit touchdown dependent, but I think they can also unveil him a little bit in the passing game. He can throw to backs against the Bengals. And the Bengals were really bad against the run early, but that's because they had some major defensive tackle issues. As they've gotten healthier, they've shored things up a little bit against the run. So I can't say I'm like banging the table for J.K. Dobbins, but I think if he's getting the volume and he's your best option, you probably have to play him as an RB2 this week, where you could be able to sit Tony Pollard if you've got some depth on your team. Tyjae Spears actually looked pretty good in his return. I didn't think he was going to play as much, but he led the team in rushing and key opportunities last week. And again, the game script should be negative here. Well, I think when you look at Dobbins, he's at least going to be an even game script, if not ahead, with the Chargers this week.
Yeah, I do have Dobbins at running back 19. So a little bit higher than you at running back 23. And then I have Pollard at 24. You have Pollard at 27. I might end up moving Pollard down. I'm getting real low on him, getting worried about this week. Now, one last question about the running backs. It looks like Tank Bigsby could be out this week, but also Trevor Lawrence is out too. So Mac Jones back there. Can you play Travis Etienne? Can he come back to life? Unfortunately, it's a tough matchup against the Lions for a run game, but he should get all the work.
Yeah, I'm not playing Travis Etienne. I just don't trust this offense at all. The Lions are so nasty in stopping the run. I mean, Joe Mixon did score last week, but it was a frustrating game for him on the ground. And that's what cost them, right? They couldn't run the ball to protect their lead late because the Lions were just so good. And they also have some pretty good cover guys when you look at it. It's not just against tight ends where they have Brian Branch and their safeties, but they also have Alex Anzalone who covers backs as well pretty well. So look at that. There's no outlet for Travis Etienne to really produce, right? He's not going to be open necessarily a lot in the passing game. He's not going to have a lot of path to scoring in this game. So there's just not a lot of upside to playing Travis Etienne. And it could be a major downside. I could see him getting under 6 points easily, and just really disappointing you if you try to play him as an RB2.
Yeah, and he only got one target in this game with Mac Jones for -1 yards. This is a complete desperation play. Like, you just need a body in your lineup. We are going to move on to our quarterback rankings. I'm a little bit worried about Lamar Jackson, despite my ranking. That we're going to have to discuss why I'm worried and if we should be moving him down our ranks. But we got to take another quick break, and then we'll get into our quarterback ranks.
If you're listening to Locked On Fantasy Football, you like different forms of football and ways to kind of get in the game from a different perspective. Well, we have a great partner for you that you must get in on here. That's Ultimate Pro Football GM. They're back, and they've added an amazing new game that you need to know about. It's a special mode that really lets you step into the mind of a coach now. You've always been the head of a football franchise GM. Now you can do coach career mode only on Ultimate Pro Football GM. On top of getting to build your dynasty by drafting players, signing free agents, and hiring coaching staff, now you also get to call offensive plays during games. That's pretty awesome. Additionally, you'll dig the new tools you can work with, such as individual training camps, upgraded negotiation systems, all that fun stuff. It's fun and realistic. This game just got a lot better for you to play. If you already have Ultimate Pro Football GM installed, be sure to do an update so you can try out the new mode. If you don't have it yet, download it right now. It's a must-have for all football fans. We love it, and we know you will too. Ultimate Pro Football GM is completely free, has no ads, 100% playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. There's a special offer as well for you Locked On Fantasy Football fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONFL, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. Make sure to get it, as this perk will jumpstart your play and give you the advantage you want in creating a dynasty with your team. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com, ultimate-gm.com, or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Pro Football GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, Michelle, time to close the show and look at our quarterback rankings. Well, you teased that you're a little bit worried, again, about Lamar Jackson. Yes, he does not have a very good history against the Steelers, and I think there was a little bit of buttering up by Mike Tomlin when he said to somebody asking about a comparison to Jane Daniels, Lamar Jackson's the best, he's awesome, he's nothing close, he's the dude right there, whatever. It seemed like he was foreshadowing maybe the Steelers defense having their way with him a little bit, which they have in multiple games.
Yeah, so this is the thing. Lamar Jackson has only played against the Steelers 4 times 4 times in his career, even though that they're division rivals, which is
Crazy.
crazy. He's just always hurt when the Ravens play the Steelers. But the 4 times he played them, it was a disaster. I mean, in those 4 games, he had 4 total touchdowns and 10 giveaways. He had only one okay fantasy day in that game, in that range. That was in week 13, 2021, where he scored 17 points. The rest, 11 points, 9 points, 14 points. His last game last year when he was MVP, like I know he's playing like an MVP this year. He won MVP last year, but when he played the Steelers at Pittsburgh, he had 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, 9 fantasy points in week 5, 2023. He's just not good against the Steelers. And the Steelers defense has been great against all quarterbacks this year. They kept Jaden Daniels to 5 rushing yards. I don't know. I'm worried. I still have him at quarterback 4 because the rankings this week are hard for quarterbacks. There's a lot of bad matchups, but I don't feel good about him there. You have him all the way up at 2. All the way up, I say. It's 2 spots above me.
Yeah, the one thing you look at with Lamar Jackson is I think the Steelers are going to have some success offensively, and that's going to be good for Lamar Jackson. Before these teams, I used to joke every time they played, like a few years ago with Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh and the defense is 20-17. I would always pick the final 20-17 because that's what I thought. It was going to come down to a late field goal, Ben Roethlisberger or Joe Flacco or Lamar Jackson. Someone was going to lead a field goal drive at the end to be 20-17. This game could blow up all the things we know about the Ravens-Steelers rivalry, right? Russell Wilson comes in hot. Look at this Ravens defense. They are pretty weak on the back end. I have Russell Wilson pretty high this week. So do you, Michelle, that I think he could have a very nice game. You have him at number 8. I'm at number 8. So we think the Steelers are going to be competitive, put up points, and that would say Lamar's got to put up some points as well. So again, the Steelers are not necessarily a shutdown defense everywhere. The key is going to be Lamar Jackson. Can he improvise and get some stuff running? Because I think that's going to be the difference, right? He needs to put up some numbers that Jaden Daniels did not do as a runner last week. And again, 2 touchdowns and ample rushing yards. Those are going to be the keys here. If the Steelers shut down that aspect, then you could really have a disappointing game from Lamar. But I'm going to trust the body of work that I see now and the Ravens offense and say, look, he's still going to be a top 12 quarterback. You cannot bench him. Do not bench him. But just temper your expectations, and you should, because he's out of this world fantastic. So you might have a 23-point game instead of a 45-point game. Live with it, folks. You've had him carry you for many weeks, but he'll still be okay at the end.
Maybe he'll be okay. Now we have Jalen Hurts, both number 1. That's easy. We have Josh Allen at number 3. We both still holding on to Joe Burrow up top here. You have him at 4. I'm at 6 against the Chargers. A little bit of a tougher defense, but like you said, they've been playing really bad teams. So like Joe Burrow's on fire. You stick with him. Now, one guy I wanted to bring up, Brock Purdy, because I have him all the way at 2 this week. You have him at 7, but I just love this matchup against the Seahawks. Like I brought up in that FanDuel when we're talking about FanDuel, is that the 49ers just always kill the Seahawks. And hey, Purdy's been a top 5 quarterback in back-to-back games now. He was the quarterback 8 and quarterback 6 prior to that. So 4 straight weeks as a top 8 guy. Purdy had 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in week 6 against the Seahawks. I think he's going to have a great week.
Yeah, I do like him quite a bit this week. I don't know if he's going to be putting up big numbers. I mean, they did go back and forth a bit with the Buccaneers. I don't know if the Seahawks will remain competitive in this game deep into the fourth quarter. So that's going to be the one thing that we look at. And what's really helped Purdy, and I'll mention this to add to what you're saying, I agree with all of it, that he should light up the Seahawks. It just comes down to how many touchdowns he puts up. Can he break 300 yards? But he's also padding his stats with rushing. He's always running a little bit more. It doesn't seem all that significant, right, to get around 20 to 25 rushing yards, but it's 2 points that you get. It really kind of boosts his play style, right, where he has the ability to extend plays and add a few more points and keep drives moving. So I do like the way Brock Purdy is playing in reality now. McCaffrey certainly helps him. I'm just hesitant to put him too high because of McCaffrey potentially having a big game as well, and maybe not passing as much as we saw last week.
Another guy I don't know why I keep doing this to myself. Yeah. I have CJ Stroud at number 5 against the Cowboys. You have him at 13, which is still higher than where he's been finishing. So you're still being nice about this matchup. the thing is, when you go through these quarterback matchups, it really is. It's just a down week for these guys that I expect. So that's what's pushing Stroud up a bit. I know Stroud hasn't been good, but he should finally get Nico Collins back. I know I said this last week, but he was inactive at the last minute. He should finally have him back. The Cowboys have just given up. Like, they've given up, and they haven't done any moves to change the coaches or anything to inspire the team. Jalen Hurts last week scored 4 touchdowns against them. The week prior, Kirk Cousins put up 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. I do think Stroud can have a good game in this matchup against a terrible, terrible Cowboys team.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried that this game becomes a lot like the Jets game. Like, they face some desperation team that has a good pass defense and just kind of cause some problems for the quarterback. That said, I like your ranking of Joe Mixon. I mean, being aggressive and having it 1, because I think that's the way the Texans have to win games at this point. I mean, we'll see what Nico Collins can bring to the table. We'll see if Deron Bland comes back. I don't know if he sparks this defense at all to kind of be a little bit more respectable. Look, I like your idea on Stroud. Like, if he was right, I would feel like a lot better about it, right? If he was playing well and not seeing a lot of pressure and succumbing there. But 13, like, that is actually high for me because he's been kind of much higher than 15th for most of the season. So I do like him better than an average week. I'm just going to cap his upside a little bit in this game because I don't know if the Cowboys are going to put up all that many points to be competitive on Sunday night.
I get you, but
yeah, let's hope.
I mean, there's no real reason to have Stroud this high. I just kind of go, going with my gut in my heart. We both also have Justin Herbert ranked top 7. I have him at 7. You have him at 6. He gets a nice matchup against the Bengals, and he's been scoring a lot of fantasy points. So, like, if he's still on waivers, pick him up and play him. I'm playing him actually. I'm playing him over Stroud. So maybe that says something about my rankings being wrong because I have both Stroud and Herbert. I feel safer about Herbert, I should say. I think Stroud could put up a huge week, and maybe I'll be disappointed with him on my bench, but Herbert just seems safer in this matchup. Now, what about Patrick Mahomes? We got to talk about him every week, but I know people are going to get excited that he's playing the Bills and it should be this high-scoring affair, and they're going to want to play him. But, I mean, last year against the Bills, it was a 20-17 game, and Mahomes put up 13 fantasy points. He just doesn't score fantasy points. Are you trusting Mahomes this week?
Yeah, I'm not into Mahomes this week. I'll just straight up say that. Like, if you're in a deeper league, I guess you can still look at him, but I have him really far down. If you want to make it clear, I'm behind Aaron Rodgers this week. That's how bad it is. I have him at 18, but that's kind of where he's been all season long, if you look where he's scoring. So it's not outrageous to rank him where we expect. The Bills have a very good pass defense. They have a very weak run defense, however. So you think the Chiefs are going to do that. We'll see about Isaiah Pacheco returning, but Kareem Hunt figures to be a big part of their game plan. So they have Hunt and Pacheco. I think they would just distribute the carries more and take pressure off Mahomes a lot more in that game. So I think they'll be conservative here, move the ball. I think they'll play a little bit of time of possession game here to keep Josh Allen off the field a little bit. They can do that. They can grind pretty well with the running game and their defense, special teams. They're just too good. We mentioned this. The Chiefs are often too good that Mahomes can be bad and they can still win because last week they blocked a game-winning field goal attempt, or they make a big play on defense. There's something else that can save them in a lot of these games. So I don't expect this to be as high scoring as we think. And if that's the case, Mahomes disappoints and Allen can still get his because of the running ability.
Now, we got news this morning that Anthony Richardson is going to be the starting quarterback again for the Colts. They get the Jets this week. Are you considering picking up Anthony Richardson and playing him? Or maybe you just pick him up and you keep him on your bench. But can you trust him in your starting lineups this week? Because I don't think so.
No, I'm going to stay away from the Colts passing game. I mean, you have to play Jonathan Taylor. Probably. I mean, there's probably not any other option, especially during a bye week where a lot of running backs are off. So you probably have to look at Taylor and play him and hope for the best. What's really hurting Taylor is they're not using him as much as you would like in the passing game. So I don't know, but maybe the return of Richardson will just add a little element to a struggling Jets defense where they have to worry about the quarterback, much like last week, right, where they worked on to contain Kyler Murray and then that the Cardinals rushing attack went off in that game. So that's what we're hoping for Taylor. So maybe it's not playing Richardson maybe it's more stashing Richardson and hoping that just his presence alone helps Taylor this week.
Yeah, and maybe if you have like a Jordan Love, who we both have as a top 10 guy this week, you're still starting Jordan Love, but maybe he struggles again this week and you keep Richardson on your bench. Maybe Richardson surprises. Like just have those options, right? If your guy has been struggling, pick him up, and then you have multiple options for, these guys to come back and to break out this year to help you win the rest of your games. I would consider picking him up in that scenario. That is it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Everydayers, please go hit that subscribe button on YouTube, give us a like, and then give us a like and share your comments on whatever podcast app you're listening to us on. We will talk to you tomorrow when we get into our wide receiver and tight end rankings. Enjoy your night. Bye, y'all.